Hello and welcome. Campbell here from Autodidactic channel. Hope you're having a fantastic day. And today we are having a chat with Jaydreamerz. And so we're going to talk about the Arctic and the apocalypse and all good stuff like that. And so you'll find Jay's links below for his YouTube channel. So please do go across, check out his work, give him a like, a subscribe, and all that kind of stuff. And you'll also find a link for Jay's book down below. So if you like the information from tonight's stream, then go down and grab yourself a copy. All right, let's get into it.
How's your studies of the dwarves and stuff? How's that going?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, we're getting into that. Had a bit of a break over Christmas, but we've got a couple of interviews with some people lined up and we're going into it. Yeah, we just sort of, I was at Kelly's house and we were just reading and I'd never heard that before, right? That dwarves are these tall elvish dudes that are more like the rulers of the dark elves, and it's bizarre.
Oh yeah. I did a study on the etymology of the word dwarf too. It's super interesting because I like Star Trek.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't watch it a lot these days, but when I was younger, I watched it all the time. And I started seeing correlations with like the different alien species that they have on there versus our actual history and our fantasy and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, like Spock, he's obviously an elf. Like,
yeah, clearly.
like they're all pretty much elves, and then Romulans are like Mexican elves. But then they have the other race. What do they call them? The Klingons. The Klingons.
Yeah.
I actually related the Klingons to the dwarves, the dwarf species. And you know what else is interesting too? I found all sorts of references to. I just recently finished reading the Colburn Bible. Have you heard of that one?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen your show. I saw you did a show.
So there's dwarf references all throughout the Colburn Bible too.
Are you serious?
Like it talks specifically about the dwarven race. Like as a matter of fact, you know what I mean? It's not once upon a time. It's like, also, let me tell you about the dwarfs. And it actually goes on talking about various species, but the dwarves are mentioned a lot.
Wow.
More than elves, actually.
Are they mentioned? Does it describe them? Are they like tall beings, or are they short, stumpy things that we're told?
Man, I can't recollect at the moment.
Yeah, right.
I just remember because I was processing so much. I was putting all in my head, you know,
it's exploding out the side.
I have to refresh myself on that one.
Yeah, because that's one of the big things as well. Is that they make everything so cutesy, right? Like the elves now, they're these little helpers and stuff that run around, do good things. And in reality, that's what spun me out when I saw Tolkien, like the first Tolkien movie. I'm like, well, and read the book as well. But when you see the movie, it's like they're tall. What? Elves are taller than humans. How does that work?
Oh yeah. I've done extensive studies on just the history of the elves and the etymology of the word and its relationship to these other gods and angels and beings and stuff like that. Super interesting. And it seems that there's different types too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like we have different races of humans or whatever, they have different subspecies of elven race too.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't believe that I'd missed the L. I only like worked that out like a few months ago. I'm like, elves, L. Oh my God, how did I miss that? Right?
Yeah, it's super interesting that the Colburn Bible mentions the dwarven race. The Lord of the Rings is really cool too, but I hope that they do. Like, I know people are like, if you read the book, you never really like the movie as much or whatever, but I want them to make a Silmarillion movie.
Silmarillion, yeah.
So like I've read it. Gets the book, it gets
disjointed.
I don't know, it gets a little, it gets kind of boring. I don't know how to describe it. Like, it's cool and everything, but it gets kind of like,
because it's not an actual
in some places
finished book though, is it? Like I think that was mainly his notes that he was going to turn into a book, and they've just kind of put it all together to publish.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not.
So check this out. So in the Silmarillion, they had the dwarven race was made first, actually, on Earth. So they were the first official race. They weren't supposed to be though. So one of the little demigods stepped out of orders or whatever, and he decided to go ahead and create the dwarven race. And then the main god was like, what are you doing? Like, they're not supposed to be first. The elves are supposed to be first. And so he basically like put them to sleep under the earth to wait for the time of the elves' arrival so that they could be born after the elves, technically, or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
right.
really interesting.
So what's the origin of the Colburn Bible? That obviously not Christian. Where does that come from?
Good question. I have no idea. The rumor is that it well, about itself, it basically dates itself back to the right around the times of the Hebrews from the story of Exodus around that
Okay.
time.
Wow. Okay.
However, um, the first, I guess, official record of it being discussed or talked about with historic records was that it was in a fire around the 1100s, and it survived some sort of a fire because it was stamped into metal,
Oh,
bronze, I think. Yeah, which is
wow.
extremely interesting too, because bronze comes up time and time again on my studies. Segueing into the North Pole. Oh
Yes.
man, like not bronze, copper, actually. Copper comes up time and time again when I'm doing my research on the geography of the ancient land at the north.
Mm.
But yeah, the books were stamped into bronze, and I mean, what how if it's real, if it's authentic or not authentic, it's one of those readings where I got something from it, and a lot of it resonated with me, and a lot of it it's like if you've just found the actual Bible and you never heard of it before, and you're reading, you're like, wow, like who would fake all this? Like this is a
Yeah.
lot to put down, you know what I mean, and make copies of and stuff like that. Like it's it's compelling.
Mm.
Whatever it is, it's compelling, you know what I mean, and
Well,
it's very clear when reading it. It's very to the point, it's very direct, which I appreciate. uh I mean, and the crazy thing too is it's got so many different aspects to it. While I was reading it, I was really excited for all of the end of the world cataclysmic stuff
yeah.
happening, but it's got sections in there that are like love story sections about these different people. It talks a lot about ancient races and beings who made these sabbaticals, I guess you could call them, to what I believe is Mount Meru, or to the land at the north, right? It references that all throughout it. Basically, that's the central key for me
Yeah.
of the Colburn Bible. When it talks about the history of these people, it talks about their origin, and basically it follows them as they kind of spread out and left that central location. You know what I mean?
Nice. Wow, man. I'm gonna have to
But
have a
there's
look
wizards, there's dwarves, there's magicians, there's uh
at
I mean, it's like the Princess Bride,
Yeah,
like it's
right.
got
Yeah.
fighting, it's got love stories, it's got
But
it's got
I
proverbs, like the proverbs when it's speaking to like a man and woman's heart, like giving them tips on life or whatnot. Wow, like good
good
stuff.
stuff. And see,
Like I
they
totally give it
love to
thumbs
try
up.
and tell us that these are all, oh, it's a fake. And like you said, who would sit down there and write these kind of books and even have the information and the wisdom to be able to do
Uh,
it, right? And then to print it up and everything. And they go, no, no,
yeah,
they're all fake, they're all fake. But this book here,
right,
this
right.
one, this is completely correct. It's not fake. But then we know that it was like it's been, the council nice area, it's been like, so edited, but they're like, no, no, this is the truth. Everything else is fake. It's okay,
Right.
fair enough, mate.
I found personally, ultimately, for me, the truth is whatever resonates with me individually.
Well,
you
that's
know?
a big thing, and we're seeing it a lot at the moment, aren't we? I mean, across the realm, really, people are, yelling at the world, right? Like, change, change. Your truth is different to mine. Is basically what they're saying, right? So change your truth.
Yeah.
But people need to understand that we're all in our own little world. Like it's a saying, right? You're in your own little world. We've all got our own reality. So the truth for me is not necessarily the truth for Jay.
Yeah. Right, exactly. I'm just walking the path, and I'm picking up pieces of the puzzle that have been fractured since the beginning. And I'm just, putting them in my little Easter egg basket or whatever. And I'm just like, hey, here's the one I got. Which one do you guys have? Do you have one that matches? Oh, mine's kind of close. And then some guy way far away is like, mine looks nothing like yours. Like, and then he runs off, doesn't get all my pieces. So he only runs off holding on to his little tiny piece or whatever.
Yeah, right. That's a good look at it,
So
isn't
we
it?
could see the the bigger picture, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like a Pokemon card game or something. Which card have you got? Oh no, your cards suck. Ah. But
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's why it's so interesting to me, because like that's what I'm doing too, is you know, not just comparing my little pieces with the pieces of others, but um every time I find a new piece of life's puzzle, it opens my eyes a bit more, or it casts more light on my path so that I can recognize those other pieces that are lying around all about me. Some I'm blind to, you know what I mean? Because I haven't gained that sight yet.
Yeah.
But with each new piece, I gain a little bit more insight to be able to find more pieces, like the North Pole land. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's just
I got like, it's come up time and time again throughout my life. This land at the North Pole, references to it all over the place. And now I picked up the piece and it casts a little bit more light, and I'm finding all sorts of evidence that there is, or at least was, and probably will be again, land at the North Pole that there's all these stories about, that we have these little fractured echoes that wave across time and make their way to us, you know,
which is
little breadcrumbs. I'm so excited about it.
yeah. Well, it's just I find it really interesting. You know, we've got this whole self-help sort of genre, and they're like, no, you've got to write down everything and you've got to create things and you've got to work out what happens and then it'll happen. But as we get, especially the last couple of years, man, I'm just finding that it's kind of like my path is pre-written or something, because stuff just and it's like you say, if you kind of ignore stuff, it just keeps coming up until you pay attention to it and you walk down that road, and then it's like, what? So it's almost like, I'm just getting this feeling that it's a lot more predestined than we think. I don't think that I think we can create between the points, but as far as the big journey, I don't think we have that much say, really.
Yeah. Oh my God. You took the words right out of my mouth. It's insane too, because when trying to, like, there's certain things that two individuals or a group of people, whatever, like, there's certain things that it will be more difficult for them to relate to when it's expressed in words. If you haven't shared in that experience or that feeling or whatever it is, it's difficult to describe it. And the things that are just being dropped into my path personally sometimes are so profound. Like, they can come from anywhere, it could be an omen that I saw in the sky, or it can be something else, and it just stops me dead in my tracks. Oftentimes for me, it's the movies. I do my whole truth in movies on my channel. But the movies will speak to me. I mean, it could be Doctor Who, it could be all kinds of stuff, but sometimes it's so dang profound. I have to pause it and walk away and like pace. Like, I have to pace around and contemplate some stuff and just soak it in for a second. You know what I mean?
It's like the burning bush in the Bible, right? It's like, oh my God, that burning bush is talking to me. But instead of burning bushes, we have movies.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, that movie's talking to me. Ah.
Yeah.
Like a bolt from God.
Yes. Oh my God. Sometimes I feel like they were written for me. I'm like, whoa, is this, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I don't want to be,
have you ever watched a movie
narcissistic or anything, but
yeah. Well, that's the thing though. But I've watched movies and it's like, oh my God, that is whoa, and it changes. And then you watch the same movie again like 5 years later, and it's like, oh, what? That's not is that even the same movie? It's just like there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Like, what was that? So it kind of is. Was it?
Yeah.
Written for me? Was that viewing just for me? Were the people next to me seeing something different? I mean, clearly they were because of interpretation. But this is the thing, right? We're all seeing a different world out there.
Yeah, my son and I were, I just introduced him to Doctor Who, and I don't know, we probably watched like the first 7 episodes so far. And I share with him all of my studies, you know what I mean? The stuff that I feel like he could grasp or whatnot. And he's quick. Oh man, when it comes to like the plasma apocalypse theory that I talk about often, he's number 2 right behind me. Like he will teach me stuff, you know what I mean? He's like, hey Dad, isn't that kind of like this? And I'm like, whoa, good one. I never even thought of that. But he's picking out stuff. He's like, Dad, pause it. And then he starts telling me like, what's symbolic in Doctor Who and what so-and-so represents and stuff. I'm like, that's good. Give me a high five.
That's awesome. But I mean, it just shows you that, like, if we got taught, how to think and more truth when we were young, I mean, where would we be as a species, right? It's just like all this shutting down.
Yeah. And then like I also have this sense and this feeling like you're talking about, um that for me personally, it's intensifying. I could feel it intensifying. There's all sorts of energies that I feel, and I can't really put my finger on half of them sometimes, you know what I mean? But I sense energies, like all kinds of different ones, not just locally, but like the world wide. Like I sense the earth's energy sometimes. And I feel like it's the energies that I'm sensing personally are growing exponentially. Um, which is like, sometimes I'll allude to the amplification of energy during the time right before this cyclical reset happens or whatnot. The energy tends to ramp up really high as things start going into flux. And then the North Pole the magnetic pole's moving and everything's going into flux and people are acting crazy and all different, you know what I mean? It happens with us too, who are truth seekers, who are looking after things. It's like knocking and the door shall open. Knock, and right before the apocalypse, not only will the door open, but bags of puzzle pieces are being thrown at you. Like,
Yeah,
here you go.
yeah.
Here's
Get
all
ready.
kinds of clues.
I mean, but you just got to look
Yeah.
around the world to see that energy is changing and that people are confused and don't know who they are, right? I mean, it's getting insane out there at the moment with what's going
Oh
on,
yeah.
identity and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I've been feeling, yeah, I feel energy a lot too. I feel all the changes and that, and it's definitely been, yeah, weird the
And
last
it's
couple of
called out
weeks.
in the Colburn
Man.
Bible too.
It does, yeah.
What was that?
I said it's been intense. The last couple of weeks, I've just been feeling this. I don't know. It's like an up in the air. Everyone's like, "What next? What do I do now?" Kind of thing. Like, okay, where do we go from here? Is kind of what I'm feeling at the moment. But I guess that's the plan, right? You got to decide where you
Indeed.
go.
Indeed. Well, if the past is destined to repeat itself, then all we need to do to answer that question is look back and say, where did they go from there when it happened to them previously? What was their course of action? What did we do beforehand that we may do again?
So this is so anyone who hasn't seen Jay's channel, obviously that he does a lot on the plasma reset and some really, really good movie reviews. Link to the channel down below. Go and check him out, subscribe, everything like that. So let's get into that then. Okay, reset. So just your perspective. When do you think the last one was?
Okay, so I'm gonna give you like the simple answer and then the in-depth one. The simple one is when the last time when the oceans were introduced.
Yeah, okay.
Like that was the last one. That's the last big, huge. Obviously, there's oceans. You know what I mean? I believe it's one of my theories so far that that's how we know which cycle we're in. That's one of the ways that we can know. There's many ways. One of those is being what color is the sky, and another one is the flood still here? Like there's oceans. It's one ocean. It's flooded everywhere. It's still here, and so I believe that with the next one, what happens is that the oceans are taken away. Okay, so every other cycle, we have a flooded world or an ocean world where the oceans are introduced, and then we have another one which is more of a it's a cross. I'd say it's a cross between tropical and desert. Basically, where we have oceans now will be deserts, or much of that will be deserts when the water is removed. And so all the water is removed, boom, red sky, desert world, and then after that, they're in the next apocalypse. The pillars of the sky are taken away, and it's seen as like the sky comes crashing down, and then all of a sudden we have an ocean again.
Wow. So no oceans. Like we're still going to have water though. Obviously, we're going to need water.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. We'll
it's
still have
just
all kinds of
basically the
water.
levels just
Actually,
going to
even better water. I would imagine.
yeah, because from underground, I guess, rather than the sort of salty.
Yeah, fresh water.
And then that obviously ties into
Yes,
the
it's bitter
maritime
right now. It's like
maritime law that we're under at the moment is obviously water based, and we can see this.
right. Yes.
I think you
And the
actually
rulers
mentioned
all go under maritime law.
yeah, and that's obviously that was going on for how many millennia, but it's really only just coming to the consciousness in the last what 20, 30 years really that this whole maritime law, you know, ocean-based kind of stuff. So it's coming out, but also we've got Lake Mead is drying up, and I think you were talking about the Euphrates the other day is drying up, or what they're calling the.
Yeah.
So we are actually losing water. By the looks
Right. Yeah, the earth is thirsty.
of
Right. Oh, okay. So to go back to your question, so there's huge resets, which I believe is the depressurization of our atmosphere. The pardon me. When the atmosphere depressurizes, because if we lived in a closed and contained system, which I think we do, it's building up pressure. It's natural to do that. And especially when you have life down underneath that is releasing up here to the surface, it's going to continuously build up more and more pressure. So when that pressure, first of all, causes a lot of side effects. It affects us and life here and what we call normal and what we're used to. And it changes things over time too. An increase in pressure will change things dramatically, including density and buoyancy and all kinds of other things. So every once in a while that pressure is released. But in between pressure releases, there's little mini catastrophes, little mini, I don't want to call them apocalypses, because for me personally, the word apocalypse references the sky opening, the sky being uncovered, or our world being uncovered. I know some people spiritualize that and just make it like, oh, like, you know, we're more spiritual, we see things better, and it's, you know, it's less physical. No, I'm talking about the sky opening. Like that is the revealing, that is the apocalypse, that is the lifting of the cover, etc.
Yeah.
So in between those depressurization times, we go through little mini apocalypses, which I'm still sorting those out sort of, and working on some various theories as to the smaller ones like Tunguska. What was that one that happened? I can't remember the name of it, but the one that affected all of the little what do you call those?
1800 Carrington.
What was it?
The Carrington event. That was 18,
you know what I'm talking about?
1812, was it?
Yeah, the Carrington event. Oh yeah, that's huge. Oh my God, that one's so insane too. Because check this out. Okay. I hope it's cool if I ramble a little bit.
Yeah, man, go for it. Yeah,
because my mind gets, I'm reminded of so many things, you know what I mean? It's all connected.
Please.
But the Carrington event is really interesting because in the plasma apocalypse, I talk about how it's possible for inanimate objects to come to life, just like in the movies, how you see in the movies, you know, and robots come to life and they want to kill everybody and stuff like that. I believe that that's very possible and probably will happen. But the Carrington event is excellent proof of that. Like, the people were trying to use their what are those machines called when they just press the button, they send messages across the world?
Telegraph, you know, is it? No,
like Morse code.
Is it called a Morse code? Yeah, Morse. Yeah, that one.
Whatever those machines were. Okay, they had to be plugged in to be used. They unplugged them and they continued to just work. You know what I mean? They were drawing life from the ether. They were dead. And they were given life from above, not by man. They continued to work. In addition to that, they started attacking people. They started shocking the heck out of the operators and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying like, hey, it was totally on purpose and it's the Terminator. Yeah. But I am saying like, if we change the conditions that we call normal, even slightly, then we can ask what are the implications of those new conditions to give us a new normal or an old one. Things that used to be considered normal for the fantasy world that we once were. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, and I've heard a lot of your stuff. You talk about, you know, phantazoids and things coming in and other beings. Is like, do you see this as like a fairly quick event? You know, kind of we're all, you know, cruising around, weird things happen in the sky opens, and like within a couple of days or a week, it's a completely different realm. Is that what you think? Okay.
Yeah, that's a fair question. So I think as far as the days go, the actual apocalypse, the legends and my research indicate that it's 7 to 12 days long. Okay. So that's actually how long on the calendar it would last for. You would have 3 days of darkness, and then the rest of the 7 days is for the Earth's electromagnetics to reconfigure themselves so that that electromagnetic dome or barrier, or what they call in academics, which is the magnetosphere, goes back up. And that once that goes back up, that's the end of the apocalypse. Everything else is just residual. Everything else is the aftermath and the post-apocalypse itself. However, how fast does it how fast does it go? Kind of depends on the individual. Me, I'm seeing signs and omens of it starting right now. You know what I mean? Like I'm watching as it's boiling, you know what I mean? But whenever it blows its top, all of my research from all around the world and across time has indicated that it will take most everyone off guard. It will take most everyone by surprise. That there's lots of signs and omens, like wars, rumors of wars, a lot of agitation in people and animals and insects and the weather itself. But when it happens, there's a calm right before it. I've even seen a lot of manuscripts that indicate that like the wind stops, there's no wind at all of the animals and all the insects go eerily quiet. It gets really quiet, like everything knows something's about to happen. And then boom, it's depressurization. And I also think that there's, like I said, there's 2 different cycles. It goes back and forth, right? Like how I talked about the red sky and the blue sky, or the desert world versus the ocean world, right? So there's 2 different happenings, 2 different ways that it happens. Basically, one is during the winter solstice, where the sun goes so far away that it just is no longer a point of focus any longer, and it goes out along with the stars and some other things too. The other one is during the summertime, the summer solstice, when it goes back towards the North Pole, burning a little yellow brick road spiral all the way to the North Pole until it gets situated in the center of the world, where the legends indicate the sun was born. The sun was born from the center of the world, or from the extreme west in a cave.
So
which is Mount Meru, I think.
Is the sun going to be replaced, or do you think it's just going to change? Like, because a lot of people are saying that the sun's already changed or been replaced. And of course, we've got all these rumors of, Billy Boy and his fake suns and all this kind of stuff, which if they exist, they're already up there.
Oh, right? You mean like man-made suns and stuff like that? Like sun simulators and stuff?
Yeah.
Sure, I think that's possible. I mean, I think anything's possible.
However, that's the
kind of thing
they could use to shield the sun moving, isn't it? Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, totally. No, I feel like anything that's man-made, anything that's technological in our world today, will be trumped by nature when this event happens. When I'm not talking about like a little flare up, I'm talking about when the oceans get sucked up, and it's the big one, right? First, I think that there's going to be an electromagnetic pulse worldwide. Magnets fall off of fridges, nothing works, all electronics go out. That's why you can't use any man-made lights or any electricity at all, basically. Dead. No computers, nothing. The only lights, there's various prophecies. There's one by this Catholic woman who is revered, I want to say like 300 or 400 years ago, I can't remember. But she made all these different prophecies, and one of them was talking about how there would be another 3 days of darkness, that demonic spirits or something like that would enter into our world, and our world would be filled with these monstrous creatures that descended from above. And she also says that no man-made light will work except for what she calls the blessed candles, which are Catholic beeswax candles, which burn the longest,
I wonder
of all
if
the different types of candles.
Like the origin of candles, because candles are very linked to spiritual practices, aren't they?
Yeah, especially around the solstices. Think about it. Think of all of the different traditions of bonfires or the Yule log or all these things that happen around the summer solstice and the winter solstice as well. Right? The winter one, you could make a story saying, well, it's the middle of winter, it's the darkest time, so everyone's lighting fires, which is only really true if you're on the northern hemisphere, right? Because they're the same. They're opposites of each other, right? And then in the summertime, the same thing happens. Places in Japan and stuff, they're lighting bonfires on top of mountains that burn for like a week. And I believe that these were traditions that were given down to family members from survivors who survived the last time, and they instituted these holy days, or these set apart times that people, that their families specifically, they didn't really care if everyone else celebrated Christmas or whatever, but they wanted their families to, because it was a means of protecting them, to ensure that no matter what information was lost, that they would be caught up in some routine where it would ensure their survival, that the odds for their family surviving would be higher, because they would be indoors, they would be gathered together, they would be burning lights and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. So do we have any information on, will this apocalypse happen on a solstice or a equinox? Is there any link there, or that you know of?
I
Basically,
think
what's
so.
the date and time? When's it going to happen?
Okay, well, I feel like we could figure it out. I feel like the people in times past knew the seasons that these things would happen, but not the time. Not like, hey, it's happening next year for sure. You know what I mean?
It's more looking for the signs, is it?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. There's a couple of reasons why, okay? Because I know when it comes to the end of the world, man, that's like first on everyone's list is when, if you don't know about it, then you ask, when's it going to happen? Just tell me exactly when it's going to happen, you know? Which it's like, I might not want you there. What do you mean tell you when it's going to happen?
Yeah.
I don't even know if you're a good person or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they want to know when's it going to happen, right? But even like if we look this up traditionally, for example, going number one on the list, Jesus was asked this in the Bible by his followers, who were the exact same then as the people are today. When's it going to happen? When's this going to happen, Jesus, right? He's like, oh man, he never ever says, June 21st in the year, like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't do that, and he's Jesus. He should know, right? He doesn't. He says to look at the seasons, the signs, read the signs that are going on around you. And there's two reasons why I think that it's very difficult. I don't want to say impossible, right? But very difficult for us collectively to determine these things. Also, why the ancients studied the skies so seriously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right? Because I don't think that they just, you know, enjoyed keeping track of, like, you know, how much time passed from one second to another second or whatever. Like they were worried about the events that would befall them, and they knew it came from the sky. So they tracked the sky and they learned these things. It was passed on to them.
I was just going to say, with a lot of these megaliths that we see, they're often lined up so that you'll have like two pillars, and you know, on the equinox or the solstice, the sun will shine exactly through them, or there's a hole carved in a rock and the sun. And I've often wondered, you know, for years, is that a marker so that when the sun doesn't line up, it means it's shifted and there's something coming?
Yes, exactly. So check this out. So I'm going to start with something a little simpler, which is I believe it's one of my theories, that every single time that this apocalyptic event happens, that it shifts the seasons. They all shift, maybe by a season or whatnot, which helps me to explain why the holidays are exact reciprocals of one another on other sides of the calendar. You know what I mean? Like, one holiday is basically the exact same as the other holiday. It's just, you know, celebrated in a different way, or it's, you know, the perspective is a little different, but basically they're all the same holidays. And so, for example, imagine that the one that we have coming up happens in the middle of the winter solstice, right? Or around Christmas time. And it lasts for a week. Let's just say it takes a week for all that stuff to happen with the Earth's magnetic pole reversal and whatnot. And a week later, it will no longer be the dead of winter. Like, as a matter of fact, it's going to take some time for the seasons to redevelop themselves, because they're based off of the what's happening in, like, with the point of focus up there in the sky and stuff. And that has to be born again too. All of these things come back. And actually, many of the legends indicate that when we go into the red sky, that there's multiple lights in the sky, like two moons, two suns. The planets are seen as much closer, and they all start revolving around the North Pole region or whatnot, and then like, I guess they moved out from there or something. But yeah, multiple suns, multiple moons, and then those end up dying off over time or whatnot.
That's interesting.
But so that's one reason why I don't believe that people can accurately predict it, because time is constantly shifting.
Yep.
Every time it's shifting. It's just like in there's this movie called The Hunger Games,
Yeah.
where there was this one like they're inside of this dome or whatever, and they're all fighting each other and stuff, right? Well, there's this one where their little battleground was like a clock, but they made it like the Earth was a clock. And once when the contestants started to figure out, like, okay, if we're in that section of the clock, there's going to be a tidal wave every hour. If we're in that section, there's going to be these creepy monsters every hour or whatever, right? The second that the contestants figure that out, the people who ran that clock spun it around and mixed it up so that they were disoriented and they didn't know which direction they were facing or what time it was or whatever. Just like us, especially if the Earth changes as well, right? We might actually be mistaken in some of our directions, like north, south, east, and west.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Every time that this happens, people might wake up thinking and remembering, okay, that way definitely is north. However, if things have shifted and moved about, it might not be. And people might be sending all of their armadas and their explorers and stuff off in the wrong direction, trying to find their way back home.
Wow, that's interesting. Because I mean, what we get when you look at, you know, the old maps, and obviously the maps show us there's been changes, you know, in the realm, right? We've got all these disappearing islands and stuff, and, you know, landlines in California and all this weirdness going on. I forgot what I was going to say now. So yeah, with the maps, what was I going to say? Like with the old books, it looks a lot like around the 1500s, early 1600s, they were out trying to remap the realm. And we get this thing, especially with Australia, right? It's like, oh no, we didn't know Australia was there, but it's literally named Terra Australis on every map from the 1400s. You know, they knew it was there, but it's like they knew this stuff was there, but they hadn't found it. And they were out looking which kind of makes sense with what you say. If their compasses were off, then it would, because it looks like it took them 100 years or so to get round and to sort of, and then they found this world that was just crumbled, you know, and we have like the stories of the cannibals and all these sort of, you know, debauchery going on. And then there's the stories that west used to be north. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I wonder if I haven't looked up the etymology of the word Australia, but just off the top of my head, it sounds like it's related to Aust, which would be west. The word west, essentially, Aust.
Or, yeah, right. Aust, okay.
It's also, I mean, the east and west are very similar too. It's just the one has an extra letter at the front.
The West Trail, Aust Trail.
Yeah. So imagine this. I mean, I'm just going to make this up, but hypothetically, let's say that, let's say somebody lives in England, or, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter where, but then they go through the apocalypse and they're like, I know I need to go north. I know I need to go to the center of the world, and they get out their compass and they start trying to go north. They're actually going to go south because the poles have flipped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're going to follow the compass and they're going to go further and further away from the actual destination.
Well, yeah. That would flip everything, wouldn't it? Everything would be reversed.
Yeah. And check this out too, because one of the biggest points of evidence for me that helps to convince me that the directions have changed is the descriptions of the pillars of Hercules and their location. And it says that they lied to the western ends of the earth. And there is no western end of the earth. You know what I mean? It's infinitely west. You just go in a circle all the way around. You know, you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
You know, so was it a euphemism for a place you can never get to? No, they actually talked about the Pillars of Hercules as a real location that people have gone to and made treks out to, you know, specifically Hercules, but a real actual location, and people have tried to, you know, to find it and stuff. I know that they say it's you know, the Gibraltar or whatever, the Rock of Gibraltar. I'm not convinced. I'm not super convinced.
No. Well, I mean, what it looks like is, and this is interesting, it looks like a lot of these places, including, you know, sort of where the Bible was set, didn't happen where they were told, you know, where we were told that they happened.
No.
Especially with the Bible, we've got people saying Africa, we've got people saying the Americas, and of course was it Hyperborea, right? Was it in the center when there was land?
Yeah.
on the
Yeah,
hills
let
of
me guess. The Americans are saying it was America.
that.
We're the promised land. I'm pretty sure it was us. I'm pretty sure that that's talking about us and referencing us over here. Everyone always thinks that all this stuff happened in their own local region, you know what I mean? Or their favorite region or whatever it may be.
Yeah, which is weird to me, right? This whole ancestor thing, as far as I'm good because people who did this were apparently my race, color, creed, culture, whatever, is just weird to me. It's like, what? Why don't you live your own? Like, that's great, and ancestor worship and all that's good, but I mean, you know, just because someone else did something doesn't make you good. It's just so weird, right? All this,
Right.
and it's people as
And
good
the inverse
don't
of
know
that
who
is
they
true
are. They're trying to
too.
get an identity, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe rightfully so in some instances, because it seems like many people's identity as a people has been scattered to the winds. So it falls to those people to know themselves, to find themselves, right?
Yeah. To go inside and find it, not to go outside and yell at the world. Change. All right,
Yeah.
so let's get into the North Pole then. So we've sort of creaked our way up there. So
Yeah, for sure.
obviously we've got the maps like Hyperborea, obviously the famous Mercator map. But then when you look into all the maps basically from the 1600s, Hyperborea is on pretty much all of them. So you talk about the land was drier, or the realm was drier and the waters came in. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that is it still there? Could it still be there? Has it been flooded? Why is there
Good
a
question, man. I
space
was,
at
I
the
was
North Pole on Google Earth? What are we talking about here?
right. I've got so many ideas as far as that goes, because I want to go.
I'm coming.
I personally feel a calling to return to the garden. And but I would like to use wisdom in that decision, and not to just be spontaneous and just, think that I have it all figured out. I'm at the moment personally, I've not been told to go. Like, the world has not said, okay, it's time to go, clearly. And I also believe that there are certain signs that let people know when the path has been made clear, basically. Damn, what was I talking about? Going to the North Pole. What was your question? I'm sorry. I totally forgot.
Hyperborea, what do you think? Is it still there? Is it flooded? Is it underwater?
Oh, okay. So there's two possibilities, I think. Well, there's many, right? One is it's underwater. It's Atlantis. It sank, or it didn't really sink because, like, the ocean water goes up,
yep,
which drowns it, or it could also sink too. But when the oceans were introduced, it's possible that Mount Meru and the surrounding islands, the four lands, traditionally are underwater. However, if that's the case, Mount Meru is said to have an opening inside of it, a very large opening that goes down into the hollows of the earth. So if that's the case, I would imagine that there would be a whirlpool or something that's, the water must flow inwards, right? But also, water is repelled by a strong magnetic force, which Mount Meru is also said to be. So it's also very possible that there's actually a bubble of just air. Just like there's a force field down there keeping the world's ocean water out. I don't know. That's a possibility. The other possibility is that there's still land there, and that it is invisible, and that most people don't go around there, that the planes don't go around there because of the electromagnetics of the world will mess up the airplanes systems, and they'll probably crash and stuff. And that many people who have taken boats to try to go through this easy shortcut from one country to another, they don't, because they crash, and there's dangerous waters up there that everyone's talked about. John Dee wrote about it, when he talks about the Indron Sea and the whirlpool and stuff like that. So my theory right now is that I fully feel convinced so far that there is a sign that people can see whenever we go into our next electromagnetic flip that light will come up out of the earth, that there is light inside of the earth in the form of electromagnetics and plasma and stuff. And it is all being drawn inwards right now, which is why we don't see that light. But whenever it reverses, that light shoots out from all of the inner earth entrances, or many of them, but specifically Mount Meru, or specifically dead center of the Garden of Eden, or the place, the cradle of life, basically. So that's like a big sign, like, hey, here I am, here's a big light, follow the light, which takes us back to the Jesus story and the wise men, and those who were wise, they followed the light, they went towards it, they went on this journey, they left everything behind, they forsake everything, turned their backs on everything, and took a sabbatical, made a trip, you know what I mean, some sort of a trip to these lands. And I believe that those people who are called to go to these lands for safety reasons, right, to continue on and to survive, that a sign is given to them, right? Not just like, hey, I think I'll just go to the North Pole today. You can, for sure. But me, I'm waiting on like permission from the world. Basically.
Yeah. Wow.
And also keep in mind that those oceans around, like on the Mercator map, I'm looking at it right now. But if my theory holds that that our atmosphere suffers an increased buoyancy factor, and the water just float up or whatever, people will be able to just walk there. Like, you don't have to worry about the Arctic Ocean, and you don't have to worry about the cold and stuff like that, because it will just be all taken away.
Okay. Because there's a lot of interesting
However,
things.
that would be post-apocalypse.
Yeah, when all the water's gone. So first thing I was going to say is, you mentioned there was a magnetic field that could be, repelling the water out. Could that be the mechanism that when the poles flip, it then doesn't have that repelling force, and so the water does go down, and that reduces the ocean levels on the Earth? I don't know, just a random
That's a possibility too. I'd say so.
Random thought. And the other one is
also keep in mind too that the reverse of that's true. Sorry for interrupting you.
No,
but the legends indicate that not only was the world flooded from above, but from below as well. So there are, according to the legends, cavernous systems where water comes up from inside of the earth. So it stands to reason it can go back down and recede through those same cavernous systems.
Yeah, it's just a valve system. And then we have the stories of, everyone's heard it, right? The megaliths and mammoths and stuff in Siberia frozen with tropical plants in their stomach, right? And everyone's like, how did that happen? I mean, that sort of is exactly what you're talking about, right? Seasons changing instantly, going from a Mediterranean kind of, atmosphere to a frozen tundra.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it also fits this theory very well, because if the world depressurizes at that point in the sky where the pole star is, basically, right, and everything is getting pulled up and the atmosphere is being sucked up and outwards, or depressurizing, you're also going to have a downdraft that's in a circle that's bigger than that area around it, that's pushing downward and bringing super cold air all the way down, and possibly even cold plasmas too. But super cold air at the very least, instantly freezing things, exactly like you see in the movies like The Day After Tomorrow, where they say that it's just super cold air pulled down from the upper atmosphere, and it just blasts everything in a huge circle all the way around. As everything inside of that is being pulled upwards, some things eject out of this world, and some things, they go back around. They go, you know what I mean? Just like a tornado. It works the same way.
Wow.
And if you take the tornado, you leave and you go to Oz, you go to like Wonderland, you know what I mean? I suppose Wonderland would be like the hollow earth, but Oz, you get sucked out.
Yeah. I mean, I heard that. That was an interesting reference you made, like the sun. I hadn't heard that one. Making its yellow brick road to the center. I mean, yeah, right. I actually saw a decode on the Wizard of Oz, but it was not about the North Pole.
I love that movie. It's deep on so many levels.
Yeah, I want to do a watch party for the what's it called? Dark Side of the Rainbow. Have you heard that? Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. Their album syncs up.
Where they play the whole track with the movie.
Yeah. That's bizarre.
Yeah, that's cool. I've always wanted to do that. I've never done it, but I believe it.
And I mean, isn't it interesting that it's those two things, right? The dark side of the moon is hooking up with the Wizard of Oz, which is going to the center of the world. Maybe, you know, it's an interesting. I mean, could that be random? I mean, this is the thing, right?
Yeah. So the dark side, the light side is the side that we see, which is the exterior. The dark side doesn't have to be like around that ball. It could just be inside of a dome. That's the dark city. You know, just like our sky is making our world dark. We live in the dark side of this moon, essentially, because it's blind. It's keeping us. It's keeping the glory of the heavens and all of the brightness from quote unquote space out, and making it dark in here. You know what I mean? So some of it seeps in through the sky, which, you know, gives us some light to see by.
Yeah, right. Cool.
But yeah. Oh, and then also like, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I've got all these points in my head. When you said
go ahead, yeah, for sure.
Two suns, Saturn, right? We get told all the time that Saturn used to be a sun. So is that the other sun? And also with the red blue plasma change and the color of the sky. If you look into it, they tell us that, what was it? Blue didn't used to exist, and the oceans used to be red. You know, because they're described as what, like claret or something, or burgundy or whatever, like a wine thing. And that would happen if the sky was a different color. So we kind of have all these references that the world was different, and they just put up as this, oh, that's just an anomaly. We don't understand what that means. But there's so many of them that, you know, you've really got to kind of pay attention, right?
Yeah. I mean, to me, this, if I feel like if you told this to a child, they would say it's because there was no blue. Like, there was no blue back then. They didn't have blue. Why not? Because in order to have any color, it's dependent upon the spectrum of light where it's coming from. It depends upon the source, right? Is blue in that spectrum? And our sunlight is constantly changing. I think this is my perspective, but not only is it me taking mental notes throughout my entire life of the different shades that the sun has been changing, but my studies also indicate the further back in time you go, the darker the sun started getting. Going back to a time when some people can remember it had more of a yellow tint to it, and it was more of a yellowish white. And then even back further where it was way more yellow sun, and people called it such, and so much that we still kind of call it a yellow sun today when we make reference to it, even though it's clearly white. But then even further back where it was orange, and then even further back whenever it was red, and then people put a red sun on their flags whenever they established their new nations or states or whatever, you know what I mean? Like they had all this red sun symbolism and stuff. And that's also piggybacks, or science, or I don't like saying science. Mainstream academics piggybacks off of that, and that's where they get their one day the sun's going to turn into a red giant or whatever. I happen to think that there's truth to that too. Not only do I see the truth in like fantasy and stuff, but I also can see the truth where academics has tried really hard to make a connection and they got close.
They just added 12 billion years in between it. But that's the thing, right? That's a good point with all the red suns, like Japanese flags and all these kind of things we see. But I mean, I'm older than you, and I definitely remember the sun being, it was orange. It was, everyone drew the sun as orange, everyone, and it's interesting because as I got older, it kind of went from orange, and then people started drawing it as yellow, and now you see a lot of them are almost white, like literally they're almost white. And even in the photos, and I don't know if it's the cameras or the film or whatever, but in the 70s and 80s photos, they just look more yellow and orange. You can almost see the light
they do
in some of them. It's bizarre.
Right. Yes, you can. I can see it too. I see the same thing when I look at those older photos from the 60s, 70s era. I see the tinge of yellow all throughout them, even ones that are taking indoors and stuff like that. I still see like there's a hint of yellow, and I know people will be like, "Oh, it's just getting old and it's just fading, and so it turns yellow or whatever, dingy." Fine, but I'm saying this is one tiny little piece of evidence that is stacked upon many all throughout history, where we have evidence that people and cultures worldwide were saying, no, the sun is red. The sun is yellow, or, even modern times, The whole story of Superman is based on the yellow sun of Earth.
That's a good point.
It's not yellow. So clearly, between the time Superman was invented and they made up that story or wrote that story to today, something has changed with the sun. It's no longer yellow.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
These are, of course, some of the signs that you've been talking about. And another sign we're seeing is a big thing that's spoken about with these apocalypses and things is people go mad, right? People lose their minds.
Oh yeah.
Look at,
yeah.
I mean, seriously, look at society at the moment. Is that not a massive sign? Like, what's going on?
I totally agree. And also, I just wanted to like give you a shout out too. Like this is one of the reasons why I actually like wanted to hang out and meet you and do a video with you and stuff, is because you know, many of my viewers, the Good Vibe Tribe, from time to time, they're like, oh, you got to check out Autodidactic, etc. And then I have, and then every time I've ever gone and checked out your live streams and stuff, the audience, just like mine, has a good vibe to it. It's got a good feel to it. And I just appreciate that. It's in a world that is malevolent. Okay. In a world that is full of evil
and at the moment,
badness and stuff. It's a breath of fresh air.
The world that's trying to tug us towards it, you know, like it's got, you know, pretty insane over the last, especially month or so, right? And it's like, no, get involved in the fighting. And I'm just like, no, not going there. I'm going.
No. Man. That's what they want.
Exactly.
They're trying to get as many on their side right before the end. I mean, I don't know if people are trying like it's purposeful. I think it's natural. I think this is naturally amplifying latent energy that is already inside of us. So if you're if you have, you know, energy inside of you that's bad vibes, it's going to amplify, and it's going to be a more difficult journey to break free of that and to breathe easy and to represent peace and kindness and goodness and stuff. We're being tempted, essentially. I guess you could look at it that way, as the energy amplifies. And if that's true, by extension, it means that just before everything flips and it changes, the world will be nuts, like collectively and in general. The world will be psychotic and full of crazy people that are justifying all kinds of horrible actions in their own minds, and they're being approved by the system in the world that they live in, because it's all upside down before it flips to right itself.
And that's exactly what we see when we look out. I remember last year, I stopped saying about halfway through last year, because I do a live stream. I'm like, God, could it get any crazier? And then I just went, yeah, clearly it can. So I've stopped saying that, because it's getting crazy out there, man. It's like, what?
Oh, it can. Yes. It can get crazier, and it can get crazier very quickly.
Yeah.
As you've seen over the past couple of years, it can get crazy like that.
Like that. It's just
something that yesterday was considered abnormal can be completely accepted and normal by tomorrow, depending on
just go and look
how
at the
things go with humanity.
Right? Like 3 years ago, there were beautiful girls in bikinis. Now there's some dude in a skirt on there. It's like, what's going on?
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's actually that's okay. So and I'll be sensitive about like how I discuss this particular issue, but that came up during my studies of the Colburn Bible about some of the signs that people look for, which was that men would be more feminine and women would be more masculine, not in those words. But that's also something that's come up time and time and time again in my studies when researching these resets and these the apocalypse and stuff, is that the energy itself of the earth goes into flux, or it starts going into flux. We reciprocate the energy. We're in the earth. We're going to resonate with the energy of what the world's doing. So the spirits of people, or the energy of people, their identities, all these things, the various layers to our invisible selves, right? They become jumbled up, and they become they go into flux. They go into flux right along with the earth, right? And so some people see the correlation, especially the religious community, and they'll just condemn anything that does go into flux because it's not the norm as it always has been. Yeah. And then when the world suffers a cataclysm, they will blame the things that went into flux, and they'll say, oh, it's because of those things that went into flux that the world is experiencing this. You're all being judged, etc. When I don't think so. I think it's just all very much natural. If anything, this is good. It's a sign, and it's talking to me and giving me a big fat warning and saying, hey, this is happening again, just like it did in the ancient times. You know what I mean?
And so it's more for us to notice it and make good decisions from that rather than to yell at it and say change, right? Because clearly that doesn't work.
All the more so.
Because
Yeah. Now,
it's been looked at
now's the
differently.
time of
Like,
testing.
this is all an expression of what's going on. It's not the cause of what's happening.
Right.
So on that note, so how do you see, you know, us weirdos, right? Us strange people who see something going on, like, you know, there's all this talk of, you know, we've got to raise our vibration and we've got to do this and all that. Do you see it as that, or do you see that there's chosen people? Because we hear these terms all the time, right? The chosen ones, all this kind of stuff, and not that, you know, I or we are trying to say we're chosen or any better or anything like this. But we hear this. It's a common phrase through ancient stories, and also the being tested.
Right.
That's just repeated over and over and over and over again, right? Being tested. Like, are you going to go to the dark side, or are you going to hold true? So yeah, how do you see that? Do you see that like we kind of talked about it before? Is this more predestined, or is this more us trying to get ourselves to a certain level before this happens?
Right. I would say honestly, there's various levels of depth that a person, including myself, could respond to that. You know what I mean? And it all depends on perspective within polarity and stuff. At the deepest level, it's all destined. At the deepest level, there is no time. At the deepest level, there is no separation between anything. So it is all one movie that's all, you know, it appears that it's playing out, but it's a deception because it's all together, all in one movie. I don't know what word they use for movies, like all in one. I want to say CD, but then I'm like, is that still a thing?
Thumb drive?
DVD? You know what I mean?
Zip file.
But yeah, so it's so at the deepest level, yeah, everything's there's no choice, essentially. There's at the deepest level, nothing is real in that how it appears to be, basically.
Yeah.
There's no separation at all. Separation introduces the fun of it all, of the perceived individualness of all of us. You know what I mean? So at the deepest level, I don't feel like there's a chosen and a not chosen. I feel like every single person is playing the most important role everywhere, anywhere that it could possibly, like from somebody that I've never met. That's the most important person in the whole universe. Just like the president, he's the most important person in the whole universe. Just like the dog over there, you know, they're all equally playing a role because they're all connected and touching one another. Just like my pinky, you know, plays an equally important role to the rest of my body. It's a part of my collective. It's part of me. But if we can, you know, not be so deep, then yeah, I totally think that I totally feel, you know, that there are people that are chosen, just like when they choose the lottery. You know, it doesn't specifically mean that like you won the lottery because you're good. It just means that you won the lottery because you were chosen. They picked you. You were selected. And actually, I think it goes back to the this Proto-Indo-European root word for Nemo. Have you ever heard that name, Nemo?
Only
it comes up a lot in my studies.
That kind of stuff. Submarine captains.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Finding Nemo. There's also the story of like Alibaba and the 40 Thieves and some other stuff too, where they use Nemo. I think Captain Nemo, right?
Yeah.
And it comes from the word nem, which means, or it implies to be chosen, but really what it means is the leftover portion. Okay. So it's seen as being chosen, but in reality, it's the leftover portion. So if we apply that to mankind, it is the survivors.
Yeah. Ah, nice. And that have you heard of New Earth Channel, Sylvie? Have you seen that?
Yeah.
When the survivors wake up.
Yeah.
So yeah. That changed my life, that series.
Yeah. I wish you would do more stuff. I used to watch her all the time.
Gosh, so we may be the opposite to chosen.
The leftovers, yes.
Maybe everyone else had a proper, you know, job to do. Like we're the leftovers. They're like, well, you guys can just show them where to walk at the end of it all. Just that's it.
Right. So here's the thing too, is like, does it mean that I'm chosen if debris is falling from the sky and there's, you know, hailstones the size of a car, and I just stand there and count on me being chosen to like not get squished, that some miracle is going to happen before this huge hailstone blinks me out of existence. No, I'm going to be wise and step aside because I see it coming. And now all of a sudden I'm chosen because I'm wise, because I did what it took to survive. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So there's random accidents, there's random things that happen to people that are of no consequence. And then there might be specific action where people are chosen by the plasma portion of this, where the spirit or the plasma, I see it as being a spirit basically, that the plasma comes into our world. And my research indicates that the plasma is a chooser, that the plasma, the red plasma that comes down into this world, sees things through the electromagnetic spectrum, and therefore it can see spirits and auras just light up. You know what I mean? And it seems like the texts from ancient times indicate that that plasma chooses something that is similar to itself, and it goes to it. And thus, you know, sometimes people get shocked and die and electrocuted or petrified or whatever it may be, which is where I believe the whole raising your vibration and, you know, like becoming positive, basically. That's all coming down into this world or whatnot. And it seems to be the destroyer. It seems to be this angel of death that lurks about and looks for signs of life. At the very least, some sort of electromagnetic life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the Hebrews, they weren't told like, hey, you're all believers in God, don't worry about the angel of death, you're fine. They had to paint blood around their entrances because it's not just a ghost story. It's electromagnetic, it's physical, it's science, it's something that you need something to repel that plasma. Some people put a horseshoe magnet on their door to get rid of that evil spirit, because plasma is repelled by a magnet or a magnetic force. So over time, that was just a horseshoe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they just threw it up there over time. But in reality, people put magnets and devices and stuff to fight these ethereal beings that seem to want to dock with them or touch them or connect with them or establish a circuit or take over them, to possess them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, think about it. If that plasma that is wrapped around our world right now, the academics calls the plasmasphere, if it is spiritual in nature and it comes into our world, our environment, and the electromagnetic dome cuts it off from its source, now it is ectoplasm. Now it has no instructions. Now it has no orders. Now it has no programming whatsoever. Now it essentially has free will. It doesn't have to go around killing everything or whatnot, but it's inclined to.
Yeah.
And one of the things it wants to do is it wants to play a part. In order to play a part in this world, when it is cut off from above, you have to be incorporated. You have to have a body. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're going to play a ghost part. Like, you know what I mean?
I keep seeing that.
You have to put on your costume.
I keep seeing that scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark when they open the Ark. And all the plasma comes out and just kills everyone.
Very much like that too.
Yeah.
And the place of safety for Indiana Jones and Miriam was the pole. They were on the pole. That was their place of safety, was being at the pole. And they closed their eyes. They knew all these things, these traditions. You know what I mean? They're like, don't look at it, like because the eyes are the windows to the soul. And if you see the movie, it went in through everybody's eyes, all those Nazis and stuff. Like it went in through their eyes and went into them or whatever, and then it connected to these other ones and stuff. And some legends even indicate that we shouldn't even touch someone else who is possessed or, you know, inundated with negative plasma, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could tie that to the whole zombie thing as well, isn't it? You know, that once they touch you, you turn into one of them.
Yes.
And I mean, there's
right, exactly. So zombies. I know it's that's why I like it so much. Like I'm very content that I've found so many connections, and I'm still continuing to find these connections with the premise of how did things begin, right? Chaos theory talks about how it's nearly impossible to predict anything that's going to happen into the future without knowing the exact conditions of how they began. The more we know about where we begin and the conditions of this world when it starts with the creation event, right? The beginning, like if you were to hit the stopwatch, the beginning would be when that electromagnetic barrier seals everything off. and it goes back up. That's the beginning of time. That's beginning of count it down to the next thing that's happening. And those are the initial conditions, right? The more we know about those initial conditions, the more we can predict about our future, which we're going to go into, and the more is revealed to us about our past, about, the more we can reconcile fact and fiction, I think.
So how much do you think they, the deletes, how much do you think they know about this? Do you think they've got the whole story? Because obviously, we're getting all these, global warming, and that's clearly tied to an event like this. They're sort of telling us there's earth changes coming and all this. How much do you think they know? Do you think they know the whole story? Because they seem to be preparing for something.
They do seem to be preparing for something. I'd say there's various levels to that, like to them. First of all, to who they are, right? There's various levels. And then also to how much do they know? That's like, let's just say that them was NASA, right? Obviously, there's top level NASA agents who know way more than the cafeteria workers and way more than the janitors, etc. Right? So to me, it's kind of the same concept that it's kind of a need to know basis. Like, you don't need to really know. But they do things to protect their families going forward. You know what I mean? I also think that as far as how much do they know, when we're talking about them specifically, for me, I'm referencing those who have gone through the rites, those who have had things, those who have well, actually, hold on, let me take a step backwards. I recognize so far two groups of individuals who know the things that we're talking about now, and maybe more, possibly. And also keep in mind that just simply being in this world after it is contained affects how much and what people know, even those who know all of it. There are conditions that could contribute to them forgetting, not knowing, or messing up the information in their minds, right? But all of that aside, it seems that there are those who know about these worldwide secrets and who know about the cataclysms and the resets and stuff that happen, and that they prepare for it. They hide it for specific reasons. However, it also seems to me that there is a conflicting law, or a rule of thumb, I guess you could call it, that they seem to have, where they have to disclose it, that they have to. It seems to me that they have certain celestial guidelines. I don't know what to call them, but something beyond Earth. There are rules out there amongst all of the alternate Earths or the heavens or whatnot. And if they break those rules, then there seems to be some sort of space cop agency that chases them. And you know what I mean? Like there seems to be all these rules in the heavens as well. So anyways, I believe that much of this is being shared with us through creative avenues, right? In a world that is very left-brained and very robotic in its mode of thought, that what is hidden is simply on the other side, on the right side. So through these mediums of creativity, like movies and music and stuff like that too. So, and then of course there are the, and I think that those ones, they just share it all with their families or their friends or whatever. I don't know. I'm just totally assuming a bunch of stuff right now, but the other side of it is the other group. The other group freely talks about it, freely tells people, but they're just not believed. Like they're not in positions of power. They're not in, I mean, oftentimes they're not in, they're not political leaders or anything like that. They tend to be regular people. And in the old ways, people were tested before they were allowed, given a platform. You know what I mean? Before you were going to be a speaker, a teacher, a presenter, a guide, whatever it may be, you had to be tested. You didn't just have a free YouTube to just declare the truth to whoever as however you see it. You were tested. People were put through these rites of testing to see what lied on the inside. That was the test. The test was, do you have positive energy or do you have negative energy, or are you a neutral path? And the test would show. It would be evident in their works and how they responded while they were being tested. And those who were approved were, they proved themselves. So they were let in on some of the secrets or whatnot, which I still think they do to this day.
Well, I mean, I think we see what happens when we don't, test people that we give a platform to, right? you seen TikTok lately? It's
Well,
just
that's kind of happening now. So
yeah,
I personally, I feel like the reason for that might just be because we're so close to the end. It doesn't really matter. Like
yeah.
it's right around the edge. Like I could tell the deepest, most insane truths about everything. I and it wouldn't even matter. People would just be like,
Well,
"That's you're just trolling us. You're just crazy. You're just a conspiracy theorist or whatever." You know what I mean?
yeah. I tend to agree. I sort of hit a point. It was probably about 3 months ago or so, and I just sort of started feeling, well, I think, can I affect anything else going forward? Should I still be speaking, or have we hit a point where people are either awake or they're not? And there's obviously been a lot of talk about this and the whole NPC thing and what's going on there. But yeah, I think I mean, it's like I was saying before, can it get any crazier? But clearly it can, but we're clearly getting close to something. The weather's crazy. Like I said, in Perth, it was 39 degrees Celsius, which is, I don't know what that is, 100 and something Fahrenheit. One day, the next day, it was like 28 degrees. It dropped,
Yeah,
so
that happened
much.
here too. That's happening
Ridiculous.
now. Actually, today was a hot
It's hot there.
day and it wasn't supposed to be hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took my son on this little trip over the weekend, and it was super muddy when we were out hiking because all the snow just instantly melted and just created mud all over the place. But those extremes, I think that we're going to see an increase in the extremes between hot and cold and other extremes as well, which is going to give rise to more violent forms of weather, more serious forms of weather that are more dangerous.
Yeah, right. So I've got all this because I mean, just looking at the world, I noticed because I was in the building industry, God, 20 years ago, and the houses are just so thrown up that they're literally, you look at these houses and you're like, they're only building that house to last 20 years. I mean, why would you do that?
Yeah.
So we see this in all the infrastructure, right? Everything that they're building is just this, it's not built to last. It's just not built to be there in 100 years, right? So is this another,
Right.
another tidbit, right? That's sort of showing us they know there's something coming. So they're not putting all their resources into building stuff that'll be destroyed, right?
Right. Absolutely. And also,
Mm.
like imagine if it's true that the world suffers depressurization, atmospheric depressurization, from time to time, think about the winds that will be kicking up, and just the wind alone blowing on many of these, your average house, your average structure that's being built today, feeble, weak, cheap, companies trying to get things done so they can produce more and more of them, but they're not designed to withstand, and they'll just be blown away just by the wind. Forget earthquakes, and there's a million other things that could happen to destroy this stuff, but the wind alone is enough. With a light breeze these days, houses are toppled.
Just reminded me of the Three Little Pigs. All right, you got to build your house.
Oh, good one. Actually, that came up. Oh my God. So check this out. That's referenced in Doctor Who, especially the first season. All throughout his adventures, he keeps seeing the words "bad wolf" over and over again.
Really?
And my son picked up on it, and he's like, "Why? What does that mean? What's that symbolic of?" I'm like, "Well, you're a child. Why don't you tell me what the simplicity of it is?" He's like, "Well, it sounds like the Three Little Pigs." I'm like, "That's exactly what it is." So, what superpower did the big bad wolf have? You know what I mean? Like, he could have knocked down those houses in a multitude of manner, but he has super wind breath, basically, which means he is symbolic of a cataclysmic event that produces wind that blows down structures that are not strong enough to withstand those winds, right?
Wow. Yeah, I'd say this is the thing,
Yeah,
right? They do tell us.
depressurization was going to create a lot of wind.
So do they tell us because, I mean, well, you sort of said you think they have to. I mean, I don't know. I always wonder about that. Do they have to? What are the rules? How come we don't know these rules? But clearly they're telling
It
us
seems to me that they abide by some of them.
Yeah, I mean,
It's kind of like the genie,
yeah,
the genie in the bottle will say like, "Oh, you get 3 wishes," but then he always messes with the
yeah.
wishes or whatnot. It's kind of like that. Like, let's say they have a rule. Hey, if you establish rulership over, a new world that you land in or something, one of the rules and expectations you must follow is that you must disclose or offer up disclosure to those who seek it, right? But they're not told exactly what the medium is. They're not told exactly how. So that's why we say the truth is so often said in jest, you know, that they get to choose whatever avenue they want, and it works along with their schedule if we don't believe what they say when they tell the truth. So why not put it in a fantasy movie, or, you know, in a fictitious story or a cartoon, or
Well, I
you know
mean,
what I mean?
their goal is to rule, so of course they're going to do whatever they can to rule, right? To keep the masses, you know, happy with
Yeah.
stories.
I also think some of them are getting ready to leave. I think that they stay. I think some of them stay to rule for a time. And I also think, based on researching various cultures that believe in like ascending up into the heavens or whatnot, or into the afterlife, it seems that there are certain expectations of the types of people that are allowed to just enter into the heavens, or to explore what I call the fractalverse, or the multiverse, or the universe, or whatever people want to call it. That not just anyone, just, hey, if you happen to make a rocket ship, you're welcome to explore the vastness of space or whatever. I'm pretty sure that there are rules that angels and guardians and jinn and all sorts of mythical creatures have told those travelers, stop. First, there is a test to see if you are psychic, or first there is a test to see if you are telepathic, or if you know, what kind of vibe. They're tested still. And I believe that one of the main reasons that I feel like these space agencies are over the past, you know, few decades or whatnot, creating all these rockets and blasting off and going out there and making it look like they're leaving this world, is because they're getting ready to leave this world.
Yeah.
That the day will come when they really will have their little golden ticket and be like, hey, what's up? I'm Kanye West. Am I on the list? Oh yeah, you know, you're on the list. Here, front row rocket seat or whatever. And they blast off and they leave because they have been told, if you dedicate your life to telling these people all these sacred truths, pretending like they're not real, like they're just songs or made up or fiction or whatever, we will give you a ticket to leave. Here's the reality of the world you live in. And this is the deal with the devil. This is the deal that they make with the devil, which is the ancestors of the fallen angels or whatnot, who know the cyclical events, and they know how to leave, or they know ways to get out of here so that they don't get trapped back in here and then start suffering. Your lifespan gets cut. You know what I mean? You're facing death. It's a death sentence to stay here, you know, depending on the conditions. So they want to leave so that they can have eternal life out there amongst the heavens, where conditions are different and they contribute to a much longer lifespan. And you know, I think that might be one of the reasons why they do what they do.
Do you think they're literally going to take off in rockets, and like they can get out while the dome's open? Pretty much, they can get out.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, because that's seen as well.
So check this out.
So how many movies do you see where, and then all these
it's in a bunch.
Take off? Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, some of them are like there was a recent one, Don't Look Up. In the movie Don't Look Up, they literally, all the elites and the rich literally blasted off to go to another world or whatever, to take off and to leave. And there was like fantasoid creatures on that world, or monsters or whatever.
Yeah.
But and also not just Greenland. In fiction and stuff like that.
Sorry, Greenland. Did you see that?
What is it?
Greenland.
Oh, Greenland.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good one too. That's a really, especially because of the connection to being so close. I feel like Greenland's the closest known country to the old islands up north. But I'm just like that. And also, I was also going to say too that the Anunnaki of the Enuma Elish, how it was translated through Zechariah Sitchin, he described how there came a time when all of the Anunnaki disappeared and they blasted off. He described it as them getting into their vehicles and leaving the earth and saying, don't worry, we'll come back. You know, we'll be back one day or whatever. I think one of them stayed behind or something, but all of them left all at the same time.
Well, I mean, that's the story
to avoid an apocalyptic scenario, I'm guessing.
Yeah. But these people that you know, that brought civilization, right, and all the information, you know, the tall whites and all this kind of stuff, they all left, didn't they? Like they kind of left with that message, you know, we'll be back. You know.
Yes, but some of their families, because they're procreating and whatnot too, some of their families, they can't take everybody, so they make preparations for those who may be left behind. They try to, you know, over time, you know, build these underground shelters or various things, or get them into certain places so that they're in the best possible place for when they have to try to survive like everybody else. They're trying to set their family members up for success, you know?
Yeah, I mean, because that's what it looks like. The last, you know, when you look at these resets, it looks like those in control, all they're trying to do is keep control through the reset. So on the other side, they're still, you know, their families are still the rich ones in control. That's what it looks like when you look at this thing. And that's kind of the whole scam, isn't it? Is they're just trying to continue this lie, right? So that, which is the lie that they're gods, right? You know, which is the fallen angels and all this kind of stuff.
And imagine this, hypothetically. Let's say that some of them decided not to leave and they stayed behind, right? Let's say it's like the president or the king or somebody famous, right? Now, imagine this. We go into the post-apocalyptic world from where we are today, which means that the sky shifts into the red spectrum, which I have a whole theory on that, about how the colors change and how the sky changes colors gradually over time. It's I believe it's very much related to the sodium vapor lamps that give off that very yellow light, that very monochrome yellowish orange kind of a color light, right? But anyways, let's say that like the king or the president or somebody survives, right? Now we have these ancient stories of sky pillars or the pillars of the earth. I mean, in various forms, this story has been cartoonified in like a billion different ways, but one thing after another, you've got these columns, beams, rods, trees, whatever it may be that grows up out of the ground and touches the sky, right? Which I believe is light. I think it's plasma shooting up, possibly cold plasma and possibly ionized oxygen, which would be, you know, have certain health benefits too. But if that's true, imagine all of that energy positively charged filling up the world. It cannot escape, right? The dome has gone back up. The barrier's gone back up. So our world is actually just filling with goodness. Like it's filling up, which it's also not, I mean, not just goodness, you know what I mean? It's a nice way to think of it, but it's filling up with energy. Right now, the earth is thirsty. That's why all the water is draining. That's why everything's going away. It's becoming thirsty. It will be refreshed. It will be revitalized when this happens. It will regenerate. It will have regenerative properties on animals, plants, humans alike. And when this happens, telepathy, which I think is the original language, becomes exponentially increased. Our souls become strengthened. Our spirits are everything that is invisible or electromagnetic in nature becomes strengthened to a degree where we can hear thoughts of others who are not so good at being quiet in their minds. And so imagine if you're the king, you're the world leader or whatever, and you run into the common people who all of a sudden are of one accord. All of a sudden they can sense one another's thoughts and they can read your mind literally, and they know all of your dark, dirty secrets. And you know, it's not a good place to be for the world's rulers. I could see why they would want to leave, you know?
Oh, they'd want to run away for sure.
It's difficult to have any control. It's difficult to be a king under those circumstances because each individual would be a king or queen in their own right. They would be the priests of their own households. And it would be difficult to have control over others when others are connected to you telepathically.
Yeah, for
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so people would actually have to relearn how to think so that they can actually block others, you know, from all their thoughts and stuff.
I know, right? People will get scared when you talk about that, but I mean, it's only, what are you thinking? What are you scared about?
Yeah.
What are you actually thinking here?
Yeah.
Do you think that
what are you thinking about?
twin poles?
What are you thinking about? What's on your mind?
Yeah. The twin poles,
Say that again?
The blue and the red plasma, I just had a thought. Is that why there's two of them? And the gap in between is the age. I don't know. Random thoughts.
The poles? I didn't understand your question.
Like Boaz and Joachim, the Freemason pillars.
Oh, the two pillars.
Pillars, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually three, but sometimes the middle one is missing.
Ah, okay. A lot of the time the middle one.
It's supposed to be three, but it depends on what age you're in.
Oh,
right?
Really?
Those beams move. Oh, can I show you something? Can I
screen
share? Is that possible?
You can share the screen.
Can we do that? You
should have permission. Let me know if you can.
All right, cool. Let me share this with you.
Yeah, cool.
Tell me if it works on your side. I have no idea.
Yep,
I don't
got
really
it.
use
Yep,
this
yep.
program.
Got the Mercator, yep.
All right. So you only see like just this one page, right?
Yeah.
The map page.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so check this out. So this is, the famous Mercator North Pole map, black and white version. Let's start with just something basic. We zoom in, and at the dead center of the world is, it says here in Latin, Rupus nigra et altissima. So that's actually the name for this mountain, is Rupus nigra et altissima, which I believe translates to rock that is dark and very deep. I'm pretty sure that's a really good translation of that. So a very deep and dark, high and lofty mountain, essentially, right? It's one way you could interpret that. And it's right there in the middle of this lake area, which I think might be the indrawn seas that are referenced. I think that this lake is pure crystal clear water, just based on my research so far. We've got all this Latin that talks about these lands on each side. I do have these translated, at least loosely translated. These are the 4 rivers that talks about coming out of the Garden of Eden, etc. You'll also notice it's a crater, right? There's mountains all the way around the edge, all the way around, right? So this is a valley. This is a bowl. The root word for grail, as in the Holy Grail, means crater. So this is a holy crater. If it's a special crater, right? It would be a set apart crater. Now, I wanted to draw your attention over here. I have a theory that this river right here is actually the original Euphrates. I feel very strongly because biblically speaking, it talks about the river Euphrates in the Bible, and it says that God split the Euphrates into 7 different streams. And right here, you actually have 7 different streams that this river splits into. I also think that this is a reference to every single time you watch a Disney movie and it shows the castle at the beginning and a little dome goes over it, right?
No.
I also think that this is the castle. Rupus nigra, I believe, is the Disney castle that has the princess locked away on the inside, which is Wisdom or Sophia.
Okay.
And if you watch that opening in every single Disney film, they're starting to show you the 4 rivers, and they're starting to show you that castle is not on land; it's on water. They've got 4 bridges on all sides of that Disney castle. It's insane. But anyways, I wanted to show you this. This is really interesting. So check this out. Not only do we have this, Rupus nigra does not say magnetic pole or pole mountain or anything magnetic whatsoever, even though it is traditionally known as being a magnetic mountain. However, over here, it does say that on this mountain that is jutting up out of the ocean. Over here on this side, it says Polus magnetis respectu insularu capitis viridis. I can't remember the exact translation, but basically this is saying that this is another magnetic mountain, right? That this entire structure is magnetic in and of itself, and it is oriented to the north magnetic direction, right? So here's one that is a magnetic mountain. Here's another in the exact middle that is a magnetic mountain. Now, hypothetically, if we needed to create an electrical arc or a dome around this central island in order to protect it from the rest of the world and to cut it off from the rest of the world, or to separate it, or to make it holy or set apart, right? We need another magnetic mountain. I don't see one on this particular map. However, let me see if I could pull up this other one here. The Arbano Monte map has one.
Oh.
Right? This is the exact same one that we looked at before. It's on this one. It's upside down, and it's loading right now, so it's kind of blurry. But you can see the exact same rock jutting up out of the ocean water with a little hole in the middle of it. And it says that this is a magnetic pole as well. On the opposite exact side of that, just go all the way across. We hit the middle, which would be boom, Mount Meru or Rupus nigra. And then on this side, we have another one. This one's a little more faded, but we have another towering mountain jetting up out of the Arctic Ocean. And right here, if you look, you can see the faded word says that this is also a magnetic pole. or really a magnetic mountain that has a pole that shoots up out of it, or a beam of energy that shoots up out of it. If that's true, then it would stand to reason that it's possible that this one over here acts as an anode or a cathode, and this one would be the opposite of it. They both release their energy from the inner earth, one positive, one negative. They shoot up into straight lines, but over time they become attracted to one another until they create an electrical arc. When they create an electrical arc, the world would have been depressurized already, so you have low pressure. All of the world's oceans have been sucked up into the sky, and all of that salt and all of that sodium, right, is up there in the atmosphere with the world's atmosphere depressurized, pulled apart, creating instant fog and mist. So you have a large-scale version, a possible large-scale version for a sodium vapor lamp, which could be the light source going into the red sky, going into the next reset. Sodium vapor lamps are specifically, one of the reasons they're used is specifically because of fog. They have, I read that they have them a lot all throughout, like, Britain and stuff like that, where places where they have more prone to fog and stuff like that, because they can penetrate the fog. So we have a natural light that can penetrate the new vapor canopy, as it's sometimes called, all throughout our world. And it begins, if you look at sodium vapor lamps, it starts off purple. There's a purple flash on a small scale. On a large scale, if this was a sodium vapor lamp, that flash would last for years. You know what I mean? But then it starts to change color into a more of a blood red color, where the sky, if this represents, our world on a macrocosmic scale, our sky, our atmosphere, the fog would start turning red. Right. And then over time, it starts to go into more of a golden amber kind of a color in amber light, and then more into monochrome yellow, basically. And the whole world would be monochrome too. This would be the light source until the pressure started to build up enough, giving rise to the birth of what we call the sun and moon and lights up there in the heavens and stuff.
You got enough polarity. Is that how I say that? Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I mean, possibly.
You got the dead center right here is where they put the G. Oh, there's a big red circle there too, which I think that this is looking from above the sky downwards. So there's a big red circle right there, which could be the depressurization point where the sky explodes, where everything leaves from that point directly up in the middle, which all the lights would be out. We would see a red circle. We would see the all-seeing eye. We would see the evil eye. We would see that red circle up there in the sky. And people versed in modern academics naturally would think that that is a giant red planet about to crash into us, or close enough. And then of course, if you add that, there's these otherworldly creatures that are now coming in through that exit point, or that door, or that window. It reminds me of that song, I see a red door and I want to paint it black. You know what I mean? I think they're talking about like sealing that up, like the black sky and all that stuff.
That's interesting. All right.
But yeah, anyways, so I wanted to share that. And then also there's another reference over here on this other Mercator map too. Some of these, I like getting the big ones so you can zoom in and read everything and stuff. Sometimes I translate all of this Latin. It's very interesting, but check this out. See, if you look up here, you can see the river that I was calling the Euphrates at this land at the North Pole. Can you see that?
Yep.
So just like on this one over here, we had the Euphrates. I'm calling it the Euphrates, but it's this 7-headed river right here. And just on the other side of that, you've got this anode mountain. We'll call that. Okay. So over here, we have another one. Boom. Wait, that's the wrong side. So over here, same 7 heads over here, right? And then underneath it, fopow, look at that. And then it's got a lot of Latin and stuff like that too, detailing this magnetic mountain. Look at that. It's a volcano, man. Look at that. That is jetting up out of the ocean. And every reference to these places, hold on, I've got another one too. Every reference to these talks about how they are high and lofty, that they are exceedingly high. I mean, look at this in comparison to these mountains, this whole mountain range. You see that? Like, here's a mountain range off to the side. Look at this huge thing.
I think we're still on the.
It's talking about how it's a magnetic pole. in the Arctic Ocean.
Hang
Isn't that
on.
interesting?
Yeah, the pictures are just lagging a little bit behind, but yeah, okay. So wow,
Oh, is it? I'm sorry.
that's all right. So you're thinking that they're plasma volcanoes, is that right? Normal volcanoes?
Yeah.
Yeah, plasma. So basically, they're
Yeah.
points that the
Yeah.
energy from inside the Earth can escape, like valves.
Right. Which
Mm.
means that it would escape also naturally and possibly through any inner Earth cavernous opening.
Mm. And so,
So you'll have many places where there might be smaller caves.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So people would naturally flock to these places where energy, good positive energy, is coming up out of the earth itself, leaving because all of it's flipped around the other way. So all the energy is coming up to the surface, basically where we are. So we get to have our golden age.
yeah,
And then there will be multiple places worldwide because there's multiple entrances into the earth. And if it's coming out of all of those entrances, then people will naturally settle around the places of power. They will naturally build on top of those cavernous openings to inundate their household with positive energy and direct the flow of it, and maybe even set up musical instruments to program it and
yeah.
change the vibration. And you know what I mean? Like, it's
Maybe even
magic.
build
It's the time
cathedrals
of
over the
magic.
top. Maybe you build big
Exactly.
cathedrals, yeah, with organs and choirs and things.
Yeah. Or maybe, maybe they'll send in one of their priestesses to go, get some word of prophecy from some god, and it's, you certain people come out because they can resonate and they can hear those things. And I mean, it's like the oracle, the Sibylline oracles and stuff
Yeah,
like
the
that.
oracles of Delphi and that. Yeah, right. So they're literally
All of
speak.
these holy cavernous systems,
Mm,
caves, gods being born in caves, people being hidden away in caves from cosmic deities, etc. And then there's always that story too. It's a flip. There's the story where there is no savior figure, there is no light, there is no whatever, and the world is dominated by evil and darkness. And then at the time when humanity needed it the most, at the worst that it had become, the light is exposed, the sword of truth comes out and it defeats the evil or whatnot. And it's seen as sleeping forever within the mountains. It's the king of the mountains sleeping
mm,
until he's called upon, until he's needed by the people, and the people cry out, and their cries and their prayers are heard or whatever. And then that, the poles flip and the world is inundated with goodness. The opposite is true too. When the world is inundated with goodness, everything gets a little too good. Everyone's a little too collective and too all on the same page. It's kind of like a hive mind Borg-like mentality, where you cannot have independent thought. And it's the utopia. It's the exact opposite as the dystopia, and the world is not okay with that either. It likes balance. So that there is an evil sky being, cosmic being that comes in and destroys it, and that savior figure, that god figure or goddess figure, oftentimes retracts, and it goes down into the netherworld. It goes down into the underworld, and it makes some trip, and then somebody chases after them to try to bring them back up, and the whole world is in mourning, and there are famines and all kinds of stuff that happens when that light or that energy retracts and it goes
mm,
away. And so we personify that. We write stories about that time and time
mm.
again. Sometimes to the extent that, when we lose the origin and the substance of these stories, it just starts to sound ridiculous, which is why
Well,
Greek mythology is skimmed over in classes.
yeah,
What I mean? If you try to tell people like, yeah, Zeus turned into a goose and had a baby with this girl that he totally took advantage of or whatever. Like, yeah, if you personify it, it sounds super messed up and weird. And you just might think all the Greek people were, you know
yeah,
what I mean, out there.
yeah.
But when you see the substance to it and realize it's not talking about human beings,
Mm,
and our
energy.
drama with one another, it's describing cosmic things that are happening between the world and the sky.
Mm,
And the part that we play in all of that, in how we experience it, our
yeah.
perspectives, our stories.
Mm. No, it's a very good point. All these stories, yeah, they're not stories about humans walking around. They're stories about journeys and about spirit and the big story, aren't
Oh,
they?
I'm still sharing my screen. I'm so sorry. Hold on.
Oh, you're right. Oh,
My
good.
bad.
All right. So,
Sorry.
um, all right, we've been going for a while. So let's, obviously, when people hear about this kind of talk and, plasma apocalypses and stuff, they can get a bit worried and think, oh my God, is it the end?
Oh,
Is it
right.
bad? So let's finish on a positive note. What do you see as the good that's going to
Yes.
come out of this?
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, good. All right. So all of the world ending, or our system, our way of life ending as we know it and changing. Change is scary when you don't know what's going on. We don't know what to expect. One good thing is learning this, as many of us are doing now, like, autodidactic, self-education. We illuminate all of those hidden recesses within the mind to eradicate fear, right? The more we study this, the more we look into these things, the less afraid we become. That's first and foremost very good news. You know what I mean? So for anyone who is afraid of these subjects, I encourage to learn more about it. It's a lot of times when you first hear about something, it can be a little scary. You can become a little nervous, but that's natural. That fear should lead us to investigation. That fear should lead us to not want to be afraid. And the only reason we're not afraid is because we have cast light everywhere. So we know where everything is. We know where we are. We know where we're situated. You know what I mean? Another thing is there are a great many benefits. I mean, just not dying is positive, right? Like if for those who survive, now don't get me wrong, it's a cleansing. Okay, so that's another positive. If you're already cleansed, or if you are working on cleansing yourself and you accept, I would like to be better, I would like to be clean, I would like to be positive, I would like to be and aspire to those things I've always wished, or maybe just return to my innocence of my childhood, right? Like being like a child, right? Um, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Surviving, right? Um, Surviving indicates that you're now waking up in a world that is inundated with positivity, right? Not that there won't be any negativity, it will just be flipped around. So just as we're experiencing all this negativity and there are just glimpses of positivity in the world we currently live in, it will be the opposite. Positivity will be the norm, or the norm to come. You know what I mean? That is the world that I've always wanted to live in. That's the world that many of us long for. And that's the reason why we feel so bad and so down, is because we feel like we're aliens. We feel like we don't belong here. We feel like we're from some other world or something. Well, guess what? If this world changes to meet our standard, or our frequency, or our vibration, all of a sudden you don't need to blast off and go to some other place. You're right at home, because everything is now the opposite of what it was when you felt like you were the opposite. You know what I mean? So that's a positive attribute. Another thing is that there are a great many residual effects from the depressurization event for those who survive, right? So if you persevere to the end and you make it past all of that, regenerative effects, as I've talked about. That blue beam that shoots up out of Mount Meru and all of the others are filling the world with electromagnetic energy, spirit energy, amplifying the spirit and making it so that you can live for a lot longer in the same world, and it gains so much more experience, even possibly reversing the aging process on the cellular level. I mean, I'm trying to give the short version of all of this, but the plasma that inundates our world contributes to, for example, elastin in the skin being reproduced, or collagen and elastin as a combination, therefore restoring youth to the body, actually physically. The plasma that comes in, plasma research is being used to cleanse things now, as to sterilize things and stuff like that too. So we're waking up in the world we've always wanted, to be free from the system. There are no rules, there are no laws. You truly get to live however you'd like to. And when you're surviving, I have found that life is that much better, that life can be appreciated and it has substance to it, as opposed to just living in loops and circles like we do today. So there are regenerative properties, benefits to the plasma apocalypse, telepathy, like we talked about. There is, I mean, this is basically along the lines of getting superpowers. Okay. Well, becoming like a superhero, because the conditions have changed. I've mentioned this many times. because it's an easy one for people to grasp, but having super strength, right? Just being able to like lift a car up into the air or something like that is now feasible because the environment itself has changed. Meanwhile, I have gone 42 years of my life working out my body, exercising under strenuous earth conditions of all this massive amount of pressure that's on me, all of a sudden relieved, and literally changing the density of objects in this world, right? While I retain mine, everything else starts to change in density. There's an increased buoyancy factor. So now I take all of these muscles that are tight and dense and have been worked out. I mean, you don't even have to exercise. I mean, this applies to people who've been sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, watching Oprah or whatever. Still, you're doing all of that under a strenuous environment. When that environment is no longer strenuous, you all of a sudden have super strength, basically. You know what I mean?
Superman.
So we increase the buoyancy factor in the world, which allows, at first, that actually makes everything float until it reaches equilibrium. But once it reaches equilibrium, we, the small ones, because I believe everything's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, we will be the strongest of all the creatures. Maybe with the exception of those who also come in at that time from other places, you know, Phantazoids and other creatures. So there are a great many benefits to all of this, including being able to make the world what you always wanted it to be, right? It'll all be reset from scratch. And all of us who have a remnant of that, a signature of that original energy from the last time when the world was filling with goodness, we carry that with us. And now we can change the world. Now we are in charge. Now there are no governments. There's no kings. There's no systems in place. Now it is life as it was intended, surviving, living, and playing. You know what I mean?
Or of the land.
Being kids in the garden again.
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel like there's a lot of positive attributes once you get past the shock of it all. And on top of that, you can learn ways to survive. Like if I know the world's going to depressurize or the atmosphere will depressurize, then I know it's going to be difficult to breathe. And therefore I can do something like go buy a little bottle of oxygen or something so that while everyone else is gasping and freaking out and trying not to pass out of sheer fear and their heart rates going out of control, I'm just going to calmly turn on my little thing, put on my oxygen. You know what I mean? I've got a gas mask over here. I've got glow sticks for when the lights go out. Like I'm not scared if those things do happen. I expect them to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm kind of rambling. There's so much good to all of this.
Good.
And this is the time when people can leave. If you know what I mean? Like if you have figured out how to leave, right? You can't just, I mean, obviously NASA and Elon and they're going by certain protocols so they can survive the trip, right?
Yeah.
So if you and your family, you know, figure out how to do stuff like that, you can leave too. You don't have to get stuck here. And not only can you leave upwards, you can leave downwards. You can go back inside into the trunk of Yggdrasil or the Tree of Life. You know what I mean? You can go back down inside and stay inside for a while and, you know, wait all the red sky and the monsters and Phantazoids. You can wait all that out.
Nice.
So yeah, lots of good news to match the shocking. Right?
Yeah. I mean, and it's like this shadow work everyone talks about. You know, if it's bad news, it's really just that we're seeing things in ourselves we don't like about ourselves, and so it's a good, you know, reason to change, right, and to become the kind of person who deserves this new world, right? I think that's the big thing is we don't want to drag all these, you know, demons across with us, do we? We want to have a world that literally is ours, where we can make the decisions. There's no, you know, force trying to tell us what to do or, you know, asking us to pay to live. So yeah, I think it's good. I mean, I've been saying quite a lot lately. I mean, if you had the choice to go back to 2019, would you? And of course, everyone in the system says, of course, yeah. But everyone who's awake is like, no way. I don't want to go back to that. So yeah, I think it's good too. So, all right, there we go. That was a good one. We're going, oh gosh, pushing an hour and a half or so. So I think we'll end it there. So that was awesome.
Well, let's do it again sometime.
Yeah,
sure.
I'd love to. Because
I just want to give myself a shout out real quick.
Yes.
If that's okay with you, like for my
yes, I was going to say yes. Where do people find you? Give all your details.
All right, sweet. Okay, so my book, I wrote a book about all of the things that we've been talking about. It's called Ancient Oblivion, the Plasma Apocalypse. Right now you can preview it on Amazon. You can read like the first, so many pages or whatnot. You can see all the contents and you can read the first few pages and, see how it resonates with you. I also have my website, jaydreamerz.com, which is I have a lot of positive reviews for my book, which is an honor. And the website's fun. I like fun stuff. So my website's super fun, very visual, lots of visual examples of all the stuff that I talk about. Even stuff that is interactive, you can engage with certain things, clicking on stuff, and lots of moving stuff and audio examples and stuff like that. And I'm also constantly adding to it. Also on my website, there's a members area. So anybody that's a member of my website, they can make posts as well. So if, people want to post like, hey, here's something I found, they can do stuff like that. I have a library I've called it the Esoteric Library. It's over 10,000 PDFs of ancient manuscripts, religious writings, cartography, all of Nikola Tesla's patents. I mean, I've got thousands upon thousands of PDFs of information in the Esoteric Library, all available to download too. And there's also a thing where others can upload stuff onto my website so we can share with one another too. So there's all of that. And obviously there's my channel where I do lots of different stuff, from Ancient Oblivion to the Plasma Apocalypse to truth in movies to random topics, all kinds of interesting stuff. It's been an honor. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks.
I've been looking forward to it.
No, I've been watching your channel for quite a while, a couple of years. So no, it's been good to finally get a chat with you. And obviously we'll leave all the links below, guys, for his website, his channel, all this kind of stuff. So do go across and check it out, give him a like, a subscribe, all that stuff, share the work around, because we're getting close and we need as many people to understand what's going on as possible. And I'd love to get you back and we'll have a chat. We were going to sort of focus on the North Pole, but since it's our first chat, we just kind of went sideways. But no, I think that was really good.
That's okay.
Definitely have to do it again.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, cheers, mate. I'll be in touch. Have a good day.
All right, thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
See you, mate. Bye.